Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this AAIDD webinar. My name is Monica Graziosi, and I am the Coordinator of Educational Programs here at AAIDD. We are joined here today by David Egan, Eric Rosenthal, and Dr. Joan Kaufman. David Egan is a trailblazer and champion of the rights of persons with disabilities, having served as a Special Olympics Sergeant Shriver International Global Messenger and a Joseph P. Kennedy Jr. Public Policy Fellow. He is the author of More Alike Than Different, My Life with Down Syndrome. With over 20 years of competitive employment from a clerk position to a career in advocacy, he currently works at Source America as a community relations coordinator in Vienna, Virginia. Thank you for joining us, David. Eric Rosenthal, JD LLD, is founder and executive director of Disability Rights International. Since establishing DRI in 1993, Rosenthal has trained human rights and disability activists and provided assistance to governments and international development of organizations worldwide. Rosenthal has conducted investigations and trained activists in more than 25 countries. DRI reports have brought worldwide attention to the rights of people with disabilities. In 2008, Eric received the Henry A. Betts Award from the American Association of People with Disabilities for pioneering the field of international human rights advocacy for people with disabilities and bringing unprecedented international awareness to their concerns. And Dr. Joan Kaufman received her PhD in clinical psychology from Yale University, where she served on faculty in the Department of Psychiatry from 1998 to 2015. She also holds an appointment as a professor of psychiatry at Johns Hopkins School of Medicine. Dr. Kaufman's research is in the area of child abuse and neglect, spanning from neurobiology to social policy. She has had over 100 peer-reviewed professional articles and book chapters published and authored the book Broken 3 Times, A Story of Child Abuse. Dr. Kaufman is a clinician, child advocate, and researcher whose career has been dedicated to work with vulnerable children and their families. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. We will be discussing the global human rights controversy of children living in institutional environments and why it is urgent that we begin placing them in family homes instead. We're going to begin with Eric Rosenthal. Take it away, Eric.
Thank you very much. Well, it's a real pleasure to be here. A gathering like this, it's particularly challenging to be on Zoom because I would love to do this informally, get a sense of the audience. And so let's try to do it as informally as we can. Please feel free to use the chat and the Q&A. And we've timed this so that we'll have some time at the end for discussion and responding to your questions. I'll also drop my email in the chat box when I'm finished, and feel free to ask questions and to reach out to me. I've recently published a paper on the international human rights controversy over the placement of children in group homes. And be happy to send a copy of that article to anybody who's interested. It goes in much more depth into the legal and policy issues. And based on the findings of my organization, I have worked, as in the introduction said, for 25 years. Disability Rights International is a human rights organization that has gone around the world to document the most serious human rights violations that we can find facing children and adults with disabilities. We focused for many years on large institutional settings, orphanages, as well as psychiatric hospitals, nursing homes, and other places. But as time went on, looked more and more at places where children were placed, because what we saw is that not only were children abused and exploited in institutions, but that it often led to a lifetime of institutionalization. One of the great tragedies of my career, looking at this over the years, when I started out in the 1990s, the Soviet Union had fallen, and the large orphanages of Eastern Europe were exposed to the world. And what happened at that point, particularly as most famously in Romania, but many other countries, is that when people saw about these horrible conditions of thousands and thousands of children in orphanages, foreign assistance rolled in and ended up rebuilding those orphanages. I interviewed at the time many family members and people with disabilities, families who desperately wanted to keep their children at home, but felt too poor to do so and pressured by doctors and governments to place them in institutions. They were living in poverty and they saw the money coming into the orphanage. So what happened? Ironically, after Ceausescu fell in Romania, the number of children in orphanages actually skyrocketed. Foreign money came in and the problem of orphanages got worse and worse. Well, we fought against that, and there's been a growing now international consensus about the dangers of large-scale institutions. We had a tremendous opportunity, and one of the pivotal moments of my career was being involved with the United Nations in drafting a new UN Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities. And that convention now says clearly that all people with disabilities have a right to live in the community with choices equal to others, and governments need to provide them with the support necessary to allow them full lives in the community. That convention has been interpreted in something called General Comment Number 5, and it said that for children, living in the community means living in a family. And it says that the evidence has shown that small institutions, group homes, what are called family-like settings are just as dangerous or as larger institutions. And that what children really need is to live in a family, no substitutions. We'll be hearing later today from Dr. Joan Kaufman, who will be telling us about the scientific information and the scientific evidence underlying that decision. But what's important for international law is that it's now recognized as an obligation of governments to ensure that no matter what a person's disability, they have a right to live in a family and they need to receive the support. The families need the protections, the families need the support to allow them to remain with their parents or with extended family, or if that's impossible, with foster care or other forms of kinship care, adoption, anything that allows them to form that emotional connection and emotional bond that's been proven scientifically to be so important for their emotional health. We thought we had won the battle with the development of the Disability Convention because now we have it in international law. But then we found, to our great surprise, that the enormous amount of international money that was going into helping close down that orphanages was actually being misused. It was a lot easier to close down an orphanage and put a child in a small facility called a home, called a group home, called residential care, where they seem to be taken care of in nice, clean, new, pretty buildings, but where in fact, the conditions, they were still left without a family. And that's been one of the great tragedies, as I said, of my career, to see that shift. Joan Kaufman and I traveled to Moldova, Romania 2 years ago, and to go back to those countries after a long career working in this area, and just it was heartbreaking to see what we saw in those group homes, conditions that were strikingly similar to the institutions that we've seen around the world. I'm going to show you a video, which is a very hard video to see. It's about 3.5 minutes. It was taken in Bulgaria as part of an investigation, taking you inside those group homes. And what you will see, if there was any question that what's called a group home, that you can have the most beautiful building, but that it's dehumanizing and dangerous, this video should dispel the illusions that group homes are really safe places. And even though we're focusing on Bulgaria, it's important to know this is a global, it is a worldwide phenomenon. In fact, the group homes of Bulgaria are relatively well funded. The European Union has helped to support those. Many big international charities, famous charities who are leading the world reform efforts, used Bulgaria as their example of the good model about how total deinstitutionalization was possible in a very short time. So the Bulgaria model that we've seen is actually not a good model, is a tragic and sad model, but it is being exported right now to Africa, to South America, to Asia, and we need to stop that process. That's why this webinar is so important. And what's important is that the United Nations next week, the UN Committee on the Rights of the Child is meeting to discuss this. They're having a day set aside to re-examine international standards to say, is it okay? What kind of alternative care? If kids can't be with their parents, where should they go? The international community has adopted what's called a call to action to say to the United Nations, please insist that the entire United Nations recognize and commit itself to implementing the Disability Convention, that the right to family needs to be implemented into the work of UNICEF, into the Committee on the Rights of the Child, by international donors. We all need to be dedicated to putting the resources into protecting children so that they can grow up in a family and they're not thrown away. I'm going to show you this video now, you'll see, unfortunately, what is going on in much of the world. Let's see, there seems to be a problem with sound. Let's see, can our organizers give us some sound?
Okay, give me just a moment. Can you hear the sound now?
Converted now to
Yes.
a center and a group home. A dead end for children, Bulgaria's group homes, is the product of an investigation by Disability Rights International onto the human rights of children and young people in Bulgaria's child care system. DRI visited 24 group homes, 5 day centers, 4 large institutions, 2 schools, and other programs for children with disabilities. This report finds that Bulgaria's child care reforms over the last decade have replaced a system of large orphanages with newer, smaller buildings that are still operating as institutions.
I don't know if it's a lack of digestion. My guess would be when she was born, she was just going to crib and never.
Okay. This child is 22. This girl, they can prevent further disability. With attention and positioning and physical therapy, this child does not have to become like the one next door. Inside Bulgaria's group homes, DRI investigators observed conditions that are strikingly similar to what DRI investigators observed in the institutions and orphanages the world over. Children sitting motionless in chairs, couches, or benches, or on concrete floors sitting in pervasive inactivity. Conditions are regimented and individualized care is lacking. Some children have shaved heads and such drab clothing, it is impossible to tell whether they are boys or girls. We observe children rocking back and forth, hitting themselves, biting their hands, or poking fingers in their eyes. These conditions are a product of long-term emotional neglect as children grow up without the love and care of a family. And as is common in institutions, children with little stimulation or positive role models develop behavioral problems and are more prone to violence and bullying of other children. Small children living with unrelated adolescents or adults are particularly at risk. She bangs herself, she bangs the crib. We're told that there's no specific behavioral programs for that. It's just a lack of stimulation. So they can't watch him, so he has to be put in the little cage. He broke out, jumped out the window, so that's why they keep him in there. The closure of Bulgaria's old orphanages was an enormous accomplishment that saved the lives of many children. But the new model of care, based on placement in group homes, is inadequate and will only lead to continued emotional damage and increased disabilities. The European Union has contributed to these problems by investing in buildings rather than families. The new UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities requires Bulgaria to protect the rights of all children to live and grow up with a family. DRI calls for an immediate moratorium on building new group homes. Urgent efforts should be made to protect families so no new admissions are needed. Every child should be in a family and not in an institution or group home. For more information, see www.driadvocacy.org.
Those are very difficult images to see. And let me say, I've seen, unfortunately, such things all over the world. I put my email in the chat box. Please feel to reach out to me if you'd like a copy of the Bulgaria report or the legal and policy analysis that we've recently submitted to the United Nations. I'll now turn over to our next speaker. And one of the facts that has been kind of the stigma, the dehumanizing perceptions of people with disabilities that has contributed to some of these bad policies is the perception that people with disabilities can't take control of their lives. So many things that they believe that people with disabilities cannot do. Well, David is an inspiring example of all the things that people with disabilities can do. So I thought it would be really valuable to hear from him about his amazing story. David?
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Eric, for inviting me to participate and speak at this event to advocate for the importance of family life. We need to make sure that all children with a disability can grow up in a caring and loving family. I fully support the call to action because it is so important for children to have the opportunity to live and grow up with a family like I did. We cannot tolerate the fact that children in many countries in the world are neglected and being raised in institutional-like environments. Institutions or a group home are not a substitute for a family, no matter the size of the setting. This, in my view, is a violation of human rights. Having a caring family is a must for all children with or without a disability. I will now share my own personal experience and how grateful I am for my family who has advocated for me and with me all throughout my life. I am David Egan, and I was born in 1977 when children were sent to institutions in the United States of America. That was the choice that was offered to my parents by social services. I'm grateful that they refused the apparent kind offer, but a critical decision they made to bring me home and ensure I had fully integrated life. Also in the 70s, children born with Down syndrome were not expected to live past 25. No matter my age or the fact that I have Down syndrome, I'm a citizen that matters and I belong in my community. I dare to dream and hope that the next generation of individuals with disabilities can live long and prosper. Quoting Star Trek science officer Spock, it's not enough to live long. We need to prosper. Our quality of life is important. I'm a Star Trek fan and I love science fiction. If we dream, we can imagine a world that greets people who are different with respect and inclusive actions. Spock also teaches us that the things that make us different are the same things that make us awesome. I am proud to say that I have experienced an inclusive life, both as a child and as an adult. My success and the ability to make my dreams come true was possible thanks to the support of a family and the people who believed in me. In my life, my parents discovered my talents and always had expectations of me. In return, I am motivated to rise to the occasion. I am in charge of my attitude, and I am in charge of my life. That outlook has helped me from childhood to adulthood in overcoming challenges, pushing the boundaries, breaking barriers, and reaching full potential. Being born on a campus was a challenge for my parents as it delayed their studies, but also a gift as we surrounded by friends who cared and experts seeking to better understand individuals with intellectual disabilities. My mom always shares her interaction with Dr. Opitz, a famous geneticist who gave my parents a scientific detailed description of my trisomy 21 Down syndrome diagnosis. So when my mom asked if she should have other children, Dr. Opitz said, "It's not about you. Jerry needs brothers and sisters." Dr. Opitz understood the value of family and the power of siblings. Interactions. I'm so glad to have 2 sisters and 1 brother, and now an extended family with their spouses and children. I always say that it is with family that I grew confident in my abilities. It is with family that I built a network in my community. It is with family that I learned and developed skills. I was not excused from chores because of my disability. On the contrary, I participate in all the activities, the fun ones and the not so fun ones. As the oldest in the family, I learned to be a leader too, teaching my brother, 12 years younger than me, to play ball. I am proud to say that I have experienced an inclusive life, both in early childhood as an adult. Many others who have Down syndrome, like me, are also successful citizens that have a place in their community. In fact, we make a difference in many settings, from the family to the legislator, from the school to the workplace, in businesses, the media, the arts, sports, and all aspects of human life. We have a lot to be proud of. We have opened new doors and new paths for a life worth living. Each one of us is first and foremost an individual with a unique personality of a one-of-a-kind family. I am very comfortable and confident with who I am. Having Down syndrome does not define me as a person. Most parents say that having a child with Down syndrome changed their lives for the better. It may not be easy at first, but later they discover that it made them better parents, enriched their lives. It opens opportunities for being engaged in public policy and improving schools, employment, and life for many, and not just for their own child. They become advocates for all. I have surprised my family, and they are amazed by the progress I have made over the years. I don't think that when I was born, my parents imagined me as an advocate for people with intellectual disabilities. I don't think that they expected me to be a published author. With my book, More Alike Than Different, My Life with Down Syndrome, I don't think they expected to be a public speaker, to testify at the Senate, speak at the United Nations, work on Capitol Hill, compete in Special Olympic sports, meet celebrities, travel the world, and have friends, hobbies, and frankly, a life like everyone else. I even dare to say an extraordinary life. The preparation for a successful life starts in early childhood with a family who cares. It takes a team. All through my journey, there were very special people who made a difference in my life. They all helped me overcome obstacles. They also challenged me to go beyond my limitations. My story is a success story to my family and all those who took interest in me. They had expectations of me and supported my dreams. When I was young, I used to ask my mother, when will I get rid of this Down syndrome thing? She would say, there's something that stays with you all your life, but does not stop you from having dreams and being successful. She was right. Thank you, Mom. Having Down syndrome is not an obstacle to success. I know that I have a disability just like many others in this world. I did not ask to have a disability. I was born with it. But I dare to dream of a world where people are respected and valued, no matter their start in life. I learned to focus on my abilities rather than my disability. I want us to imagine the possibilities. Inclusion starts at home with family. My mom and dad watched every milestone of my development. They played with me, read me books, took trips, celebrated festivities, and shared the ups and downs of life. I experienced inclusion all throughout my life. As a young child, I went to the Wiseman Early Childhood Preschool program at the University of Wisconsin, where I learned with my peers. It made a difference in my social skills and the ability to interact and to express myself. I love sports, and my family got me involved with the Vienna T-Ball Little League and at our community pool. I learned to swim with the regular team. I would even join in competitions and in relays. In fact, I am a very good swimmer. Now let me tell you about my adult life and my career. Employment is a defining aspect of adult life. It connects us to full participation and inclusion in our communities. I was treated like other employees at work. I also made friends at work. They made me feel part of the team. In 2015, I applied and was selected for the Joseph P. Kennedy Jr. Public Policy Fellowship. I had two assignments. I first served on Capitol Hill with the Ways and Means Social Security Subcommittee, and then I worked with the National Down Syndrome Society. Both positions provided me with opportunities to learn, serve, and contribute. It was a great honor to have been selected as the first person with an intellectual disability to serve in this position. It was a historic milestone. One of the highlights of my assignment on Capitol Hill was engaging in casual conversations. These unplanned meetings were quite impactful as they offered me an opportunity to assert our human and civil rights. As a reminder to those around me that people with intellectual disabilities do not have to hide. We do not need to be sent to institutions. After the fellowship, I applied and was hired by Source America as a community relations coordinator. Source America is the largest nonprofit organization that promotes employment choices and opportunities for people with disabilities. This new chapter in my career is allowing me to build alliances among various groups and advocate for inclusion. When I was 12, I was dreaming of winning the race in Special Olympics. I still like the competitions and want to win many races. And now I dare to dream about changing the way people think of us, changing the perceptions, opening doors for people with disabilities to shine and overcome challenges, not only in sports, but in every aspect of our lives and at all levels of our society. Now I want to ask all of you, if you believe that individuals with a disability can be successful. Do you? Dream with me of a world where individuals with disabilities grow up with a loving family, friends, and people who respect them and encourage them to succeed. We need to boldly go where no one has gone before, trying a new course to ignite the dreams that belong to all of us. My dream is a dream of advocacy. When I look back at the 44 years of my life, I am thankful. I am proud to have a great family, competitive jobs for over 20 years, and a rewarding life. My story is a success story. I was not an exception, but rather the norm. Many others have success stories too, and it all starts with being raised by a loving and caring family. We all have dreams. We want to be included. We want to be part of the community. We belong, we matter, and we contribute in our community and in the workplace. Inclusion throughout life is important, and it starts with family. If you want to learn more about me, check out my website at davideganadvocacy.com. My heartfelt thanks to each one of you for allowing me to share my thoughts and story. I hope that you are champions for a world that accepts our differences, sees what unifies us, and our common need to start our lives with a loving family. Thank you.
Thank you, David, for that. Very, very moving, and really, you've led a truly accomplished and wonderful life. And we hope that many will be inspired by this. And this is what it's all about. This is why we're all advocates. We'll now hear from Dr. Joan Kaufman.
Before getting started, I just also want to say, David, thank you for sharing your story, and thank you for using your energies to make life better for other people. And we all know if someone had locked you away and sent you to some institution somewhere, you would not have been able to reach the incredible potential that you've been able to show. So thank you for all that you do. So I'm going to share my screen. And let's see. You can see my slides? And you can hear me, yes? All right, so I'm going to be presenting today a position piece that was put together. Let me just get this out of the way. By a group of 24 clinical researchers from around the world. I have collaborators from the United States, the UK, Netherlands, Israel, all who've worked in the area of institutional care for the past several decades. And together, we've made a series of statements that we've submitted to the CRC. It is available on their website under the academia section with my name, Joan Kaufman et al. But among this group are Charlie Zena and others, Nathan Fox and others who are involved in the Bucharest study, which many people are familiar with, the only randomized control trial comparing institutional care to foster care. Many others who've worked in the area for a long time, as well as those who are like Phil Fisher, who's developed therapeutic foster care, my colleague Paul Breisky, who's been running foster care programs for children with developmental disabilities, medical complexities, psychiatric problems. And so some of the points that I'm going to make today were really signed off by this entire team. So I'm just moving forward. Let's see if this is gonna. Okay, so the first point that we made in our statement that I want to just ring out loud and clear is that we are signing on to the UN Committee's Rights for Persons with Disability position that the right to family should be a standard of international law. We understand this is an area of controversy. That's why we're having these meetings right now. The UN Convention on the Rights of Children talks about sometimes it's suitable to put children in institutions when it's necessary. And we understand that part of the argument for why we should not make this international law is that there's not a government, a country in this world that has completely gotten rid of residential care. And to that we say, it doesn't have to exist now for it to be a standard of international law. It is something to strive for. And as an example, and this actually comes from some writings from Eric Rosenthal, you know, protection against discrimination is accepted as international law, and there is not a country in the world where there is no discrimination. So we need to set as a standard children's right to family with the goal that we are going to work to get there, even if we don't have any place that it exists yet, that we've completely eliminated it. So that was the first point on our statement. The other is, and this is one where there's not a lot of controversy, the issue about most people agree eliminating large-scale institutions is key. I'm highlighting here the Lancet paper that was published in 2020, with many of the co-authors helped sign on this. And we know that reviewing the literature, without a doubt, and this was a meta-analysis showing kind of across multiple studies, children reared in institutions show significant developmental delays across multiple areas: cognition, physical development, brain development, problems with attention, problems with attachment, social relationships as well. And what we know is when children are removed from institutions, they start to show gains. We also know that there's sort of a dose response. The longer you're in an institution, the longer and the more detrimental are the effects. The randomized controlled trial is probably the strongest evidence. We know that institutions are bad. And I think at this point, most people will agree. And so that's not controversial. The question is whether small scale institutions and group homes are similarly bad for children, and can we really say that we need to get rid of them? And the data is actually pretty strong too, that many of the same problems, and actually, you know, we all sat and watched that video from Bulgaria, and a lot of times people try to think, oh, well, that's the exception to the rule. But we know even in quote unquote good small group homes, they're not optimal for child development. It doesn't replace the type of relationship and attachment that's necessary to optimize development and growth. Some of the problems that are very common in many of the smaller scale group homes are high child to caregiver ratios. Most of the group homes do have a rotating staff. As we talked about, very routinized schedules, lack of individualized care. There's also high rates of turnover. We also saw that many times human rights violations, and the data is also very clear: higher rates of physical abuse, sexual abuse, other forms of exploitation, and multiple bad outcomes have been documented. Where I think there's been lots of controversy in the literature, and this is a preprint that has not been published yet by my colleague, Marinus van Oostendorp, and I may or may not have properly said his name, and I apologize if I haven't. So that many of the small group homes have rotating staff, but the SOS Children's Village home works on a slightly different model. They have what they call small family-like group homes with 6 to 8 children of different ages living together, and a quote unquote mother figure who's there day and night most of the time and is assisted by an aunt who sort of helps with other house cleaning things. And people have really said, well, maybe these small family group-like homes are, good enough. They're comparable to family-based living. And so a core question that he hoped to answer by doing a meta-analysis was, do children raised in these SOS family-like group homes show better physical, cognitive, socioemotional, developmental outcomes than children reared in institutions? And are they comparable to family-based living? And essentially what the results of the data shows is that really across the board, different areas of development, they do not do as well as children who are raised in families, be it birth families, foster families, adoptive families. And actually on some measures like physical growth, they actually do worse than children in your standard institution. So the notion that some sort of small group homes or family-like group homes are good enough and can meet children's developmental needs, again, the data does not support that. So our position is children should have a right to a family, that the data for both large and small institutions suggest they need to be eliminated. And while lots of people have talked about a progressive elimination, we are also proposing there should be a time frame that we really need to be moving for. And we looked at the data in Rwanda, which is not a resource-rich country, but in Rwanda, in 4 years, they were able to successfully get 70% of the children that were living in institutions, over 3,000, with either biological families or into foster families. So if in Rwanda, they can have a 70% reduction within 4 years, I think as an international effort, we should set as a goal within 20 years that we can eliminate institutional care for children. And we've been talking a lot about children with developmental disabilities, but we know the other children who often end up in institutions are children with abuse, neglect, abandonment, family problems, and really for the whole gamut of children, we want to be able to get them family-based care. And so what are we going to do with all the bricks and mortar that has been invested? These current residential and group homes can be transformed into community centers that can offer outpatient assessments, case management, physical therapy, mental health treatment, other needs, so that these are readily available within the community so that if children have special needs, they can readily get it. People also say, well, you can't get rid of residential centers because sometimes children are so out of control, they can't be maintained at home, it's not safe. We are not opposed to short-term acute treatment. There are times where children do need to be in a secure facility and get specialized treatment, but there's nothing that says children need to live forever in these things. So it's possible that these centers can also provide short-term acute treatment. And they also can be transformed into family intervention centers where parents can stay while they receive something like substance abuse treatment, and their children can be with them and they get the other necessary supports. So we are really proposing not at some point down the road, but to really set a concrete goal and work towards achieving complete and total deinstitutionalization. We also recognize that there are times where some form of residential care might be necessary. My understanding is that we have thousands of unoccupied migrant children crossing the southern border in our country right now. International law has mechanisms for requiring national emergencies to be recognized and allowing human rights standards to be temporarily suspended. So it's not inconsistent in saying it's international law that children should have a right to a family and recognizing that sometimes, I mean, and the world is a mess right now, that we might need to have some short-term residential type facilities in these sort of national emergencies, in times of war, social disruption, but we also need to establish international standards for these. We need to be sure that children have adequate physical care, that their emotional needs are met, and really what's most important when children are separated from caregivers, that we have mechanisms in place to connect them to family. I have a colleague who was volunteering down on the border here, and she said the most therapeutic thing they were able to do for the children when they were there was get them a phone so that they could talk to their birth parents in their native country or to the relatives that they were hoping to soon be able to achieve. And so when we have these sort of short-term placements that are necessary sometimes in these emergencies, we want to make sure that they have the proper staff in place to be able to get children connected to families as soon as possible. So we recognized there are going to be times when they're necessary, but we need to have standards, and the goal is that they be short-term. What we also know is that if we're going to eliminate, and we've talked a little bit about this, institutional care, we have to make an investment in family support, preventive services, and specialized services in the community. And I've been involved with this work kind of in the United States for a long period of time. And as I looked at the data as we were writing this letter, I actually felt a little bit positive in that in the last 20 years, the Child Protective Services in the United States has had a 25% drop in the number of children needing to be in out-of-home care, but a 90% drop in the number of children who are placed in residential and congregate care settings, from over 100,000 to just now a little over 10,000. So we have further to go, but we've been able to make these improvements. And how did we make these improvements? Through dissemination of evidence-based family support services, parent substance abuse treatment, models of therapeutic foster care that are designed for children with psychiatric problems, developmental disabilities, medical complexity. Also, what's really important is adding resources. So children, if they can't be with a biological parent, can be with kin, having adoption incentives so that if you adopt a child, you can still have some support, and also wide scale implementation of trauma-informed services. We have interventions that we know make a difference for the multiply traumatized children. I know at other times when I spoke about this, people were saying to me, but what about those kids with complex trauma? They need to be in a group setting. And there's nothing that suggests they need to be in a group setting. If they have a nightmare in the middle of the night, they want to know who's going to be there when they wake up. We can do our trauma-informed services, and we know that they've been very effective in multiple countries in providing recovery, helping facilitate recovery. I have a website here, which is the California Evidence-Based Clearinghouse that really does have a catalog. I'm not going to go into a million different types of programs, but we've made great progress in many of the things that brought children into care in the past, like self-injury behavior, sexual acting out behavior, significant trauma symptoms. We have therapeutic interventions for those things that do not require and work better when they're done with a supportive parent. So no need for children to be in institutions for these types of interventions. We've been talking a lot about family-based care. And what I really also want to just highlight is it's not just a family, but it's a permanent family. And, children need to know that there's someone who's there for them and is there for the long time. And when we talk about permanence in a long-term committed caring relationship, a child who may have to have an out-of-home placement or alternative placement may ultimately have that permanent relationship with their biological parent, where we can do interventions to help support that parent so that the children can safely go back home, or by giving relatives, caregivers, custody, or by finalizing adoptions with non-relatives. The bottom line is children don't stop needing parents when they turn 18. I have a 24-year-old, I have a 28-year-old. I'm still on call a lot of the time. And the point is, that's what life is about, that you have someone to celebrate your holidays with, that you have someone to go to, and that families really are lifelong. And so we have to be thinking about how do we make sure that children who are in need of alternative care not only have a short-term family, but a lifetime family. And I know another thing that's come up oftentimes when we've had these discussions, but what about the kids who don't want to live in families, who say they want to live in group homes? And I've been in this field for a very long time, and I've never heard a child at their first time entering a placement saying, can I go to a group home? The only time I've seen children say, I want to live in a group home is when we have failed them, when they have had repeat out of home placements, changes in placements and instability. And that is our job as professionals working in the field. If a child does have a change, we need to understand why and help to promote that permanence and that stability. That the move to saying, oh, I'd rather live in a group home usually comes after complete repeat disappointments. And so we need to think about how to optimize these secure, stable, long-term relationships for children. And this is, from our research and the research of others, but the bottom line is the availability of positive, stable supports is the most important factor in promoting resilience and recovery in children. In our work, it's been associated with, for kids with a history of maltreatment, decreased likelihood of depression, decreased likelihood of those HP axis stress axis abnormalities, reduced liability for psychiatric illness associated with genes that confer risk for psychiatric illness. And we've also seen how it can reduce the impact of trauma on the brain. There's been all sorts of studies that have shown that, so this is looking at adversity and showing that the more adversity you have, the higher activation you have in those systems involved in threat processing in the brain. But for those kids with a positive, stable support, you don't see those brain changes. And so again, the most important factor as we're thinking about promoting resilience, recovery, positive adaptation with some disabilities, it's those positive, stable supports that really make the difference. The other Lancet paper, which was a companion to that one, was looking at policy and practice. Okay, they say the data tells us we do not want to put children in group care. And so, these are some of the take-home messages, the importance of really global actors working together. And over the last couple of days, for those of you who may have been in some of the other webinars, it's been incredible to listen to some of the creative solutions people have come, so that when, people are in Kenya, they came up with, they had a WhatsApp parent support group, so how can you sort of think about creative ways and work together to move to family-based care. It has to sort of be designed on a local level at different areas, depending on what's happening, in that community. There may be different issues that need to be addressed to help support children and families. It's kind of here in the middle, but it's really the most important: support families and prevent unnecessary family and child separation, including providing respite care. Facilitate community engagement, promoting workforce development, promoting ongoing support, and very importantly, also collect data so that we know what's working, what's not working. I mean, one of the saddest things is we don't even know exactly how many children there are in institutional care around the world because we don't have good records of it. The other thing I'm going to just throw out there is we also need to leverage technology. We can have worldwide conferences with everybody in the comfort of their home. We can learn from each other. We can use mobile phones to do assessments. We can use mobile phones to do mobile therapy. We can do teleconsultation, teletraining, and that we really have the capacity. And I know I'm supposed to be stopping just about now, but I'm going to just end with a conclusion that we believe, and this is again of some of the leading clinical researchers around the country or around the world who've been working in this area, that with commitment and proper resourcing, critical international and national partnerships, family support, local community engagement, proper data to monitor progress, the practice of institutionalization of children can be eradicated by the year 2042. I think we need to set a deadline, work towards it, monitor it, and work to really end this process.
Thank you very much, Joan. Having the scientists on our side is a real plus. They may not believe us, but with the people with all the PhDs and MDs all gathered around, the science is there. The fact that it looks like you're cleaning up an institution when you make a nice, clean, pretty place. But There's no substitute for the love and care of a family, and evidence-based practice really does exist. Two small legal comments to clarify, and then hopefully we'll take some Q&A. We've got a few minutes. People should feel free to write in the chat or in the Q&A if you have any questions. One, there is a misnomer under international law. Many people believe that institutions have been replaced by what they call residential care or group homes. The UN Special Rapporteur on Disability has said anything that is not a family is an institution. So when we hear Dr. Kaufman saying institutions can be abolished, it's important to understand that that means institutions, residential care, group homes, whatever you call it, all the alternatives that are not family-based are what we are working towards through what's called progressive elimination. It's not going to happen overnight, but we have to keep our eyes on the prize and focus and use resources to get kids into families. And the second issue on emergencies, wartime, mass migration, civil unrest, economic collapse, those are all very hard situations. And we know it's important for children to have shelter under any circumstances. And so when a war is going on, when there's a tornado or a hurricane, we're going to give kids shelter in maybe a congregate setting, maybe not. The international right to live and grow up in the family is universal and can never be suspended. So if the child is temporarily in some form of, call it a shelter, call it congregate placement, call it whatever you will, they still have a right to be with their family. Every effort, as you said, give them the cell phone, let them call home. The right to be in a family does not get suspended. It just, until such point as we can reestablish the immediate contact with the family, you put them in wherever they're going to stay alive. And that's
I do one quick interruption. Okay,
Yep.
You said we're going to get children into families. What we also want to do is we want to keep children in families. There are too many children who are being taken from their home because they don't have a ramp and they need to be on a wheelchair. But a foster parent can have someone put a wheelchair, make their house wheelchair accessible, but a birth parent can't. And so how do we get birth families the resources they need so children can stay in families?
Absolutely. Absolutely. With family supports, the breakup never needs to happen. And the best outcome we can have is make it so that we don't have to get them into families, but we keep them where they are. And that's what we want to see. So thank you very much. I see a couple little things in the chat. And let me just want to add, there was a comment here from Marissa Brown, which reminds me, I want to thank a number of the people who are attendees. My organization, Disability Rights International, is a small nonprofit. We could only do the work that we do when people usually volunteer to help us out. There is tremendous expertise in the United States, PhDs, developmental disability experts, and people like David, who are here as a volunteer today, experts by experience. Joan volunteered to come to Moldova and Romania and help us assess the situation. As attendees today, we have Marissa Brown, who recently worked at the Center on Child and Human Development at Georgetown, and who's been an activist, a parent activist her whole life, and Melanie Miller, both of whom volunteered to do those assessments and are co-authors of our Bulgaria report. So I want to both thank our broader community. We couldn't do this without you, and encourage people on this call. If you've got some time, you want to volunteer, you want to help us out, we need all the support we can get. You've got my email. Please reach out to us. I'll be happy to send you more literature than you can imagine. But most important, we'd love to hear from you and we'd love to have your support. In the Q&A box, are there any existing large-scale institutions for children in the United States? And thank you for clarifying what it means to be an institution. Sadly, I believe that there probably are. We find, I've heard of stories of children who are placed in adult nursing homes. I don't think that they're specifically an institution for children. Kids are placed in adult facilities, which might even be worse. But there are certainly institutions. So as Joan pointed out, we're moving away from that. We've made tremendous progress, but there's still a ways to go. Joan, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, what was more common were those residential facilities where so children would be sent out of state and really just kind of stuck there till they grow up with no connection to family whatsoever. So our Child Protective Service has really been working to get away from congregate care, which is great, but there are still children who, for sometimes it's mental health reasons, sometimes it is developmental disabilities. And as David said, his parents were told, to send him away because he was a child that was born with a developmental disability. So some of these places still exist. The good news is the numbers are down, but they still exist.
It's a struggle all over the globe. Let me thank the American Association of Intellectual and Developmental Disability for hosting us today. I think we have about 45 seconds left. David, do you want to have the last word?
Yes, I want to thank everyone for allowing me to be part of this webinar and getting to know more about what everybody does from an international level and an international perspective. Really combines the great work of so many individuals and so many countless examples that can be shown at every level. I mean, you name it. I mean, this is the time that this needs to happen. And when I saw that year that Joan touched on, that's going to take an incredible amount of time on an individual person that could continually to do as much as they can. But there are times when the work can be too great. And so we need to go ahead and to acknowledge or recognize and give a shout out to the organizations and individuals who have done as much as they say they are doing, and to keep the call of action ongoing. It is that critical. Thank you all.
What a great way to end. Much appreciated. Yes, please endorse our call to action. It's on our website, triadvocacy.org. We've got the link into it. We want your support. And again, Monica, AAIDD, thanks so much.
Yeah, Monica, thank you. Thank you.
David, Joan, and Eric, thank you so much for joining us and speaking today. And thank you so much to all of our attendees. Have a great afternoon.
All right. Bye-bye.